What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Hopefully welcome back. If you've been watching these videos, you know we've split these tracks to rebuild the track tensioners, and then also we've got some issues with these track frames forking open. I got stuff apart over here. We're going to rebuild these track tensioners. These guys are, they're shot. And which one of these numbers is the actual part number? I don't know. Maybe it's this one, maybe it's that one, maybe it's that one. But if you need these for your Cat 215B, those are the parts that seem to be the correct ones for this. I've test fit them on this rod, the tensioner rod, and that fits. And then I've checked those O-rings, and then there's like a plastic retainer that seem to be the correct size. So we're going to clean these things up, tear them down, and put the new seals in. And you know, these things were really cheap. They're like 16, 17 bucks. You know, obviously, you know, the labor to get to them is through the roof, but hey, you know, progress is progress, and getting stuff working is always good. So yeah, let's get into it. We're all set up over here. I'd like to be using some rags. I had some old socks and white beaters set aside, but I don't know where they're at. I had them in bags, so we'll just be using paper towels. Start getting these guys cleaned up. Sorry about that, guys. Had to take the little umbrella up. It was catching too much wind. One thing I just noticed while I was cleaning this off is we've got, I guess, a fastener, I'm going to refer to it as, with a grease circle on it that puts the grease in. And then you can see it on this one here. We've got a bolt that you can loosen, and it will let grease come out of this port here. You can see that that fastener is broke off in this tensioner. So I think we'll be extracting that prior to doing the actual rebuild. So I don't want to heat this up too much and damage the seals. Yeah, so I'm going to try and get all of the excess grease out of here, because we're going to be laying some heat on this thing and don't need a grease fire. All right, there we go. We got the first seal out. Okay, I guess this is fixed. It's not just a bushing that will slide in and slide out. It seems like I've got to get this out with a pick tool and then somehow squeeze the new one in. So I'm gonna go get a pick tool of sorts, and we'll see if we can get that out. All right, so I just got this out. If you take a look at the seal, you can see it's blown out pretty good. I don't know if that's just from wear or it's gotten really hot, but this is the way it came out. You can see that's the back side, so that's the orientation, but it looks like it just kind of squeezes in there. We're set up out here to try and extract this track tensioner pressure relief that is broken off. As you can see, that fastener has been broken off. That needs to come out. This is where you fill it. That's where you relieve it. So we can't get no relief. We got to take it out of there. I recently Got a tank of the MIG mix for my welder. I've been using the flux core, but I sprung for the tank and I already have the correct wire for that. It's a little breezy right now, as you can see. We're outside. Maybe we'd be better off using the flux core at this moment, but we're going to give it a shot. So I'm going to prep this up, I'm going to grind it, and I'm going to do this nut trick where you basically weld the nut onto there, use the wrench, try and back it off. I've had great luck with this in the past. If you guys want to go back, maybe I'll add a link for that video to this description, but if you want to go back to where I did a repair on the Komatsu D57 S1 track, so I guess it was the idler. I had to extract 12 broken off bolts from that idler. What a mess, but that worked great. So let's go ahead and get it going. As you can see, we've taken a number of shots at this. One thing I've noticed is if the fastener itself is over the size of 3/8, you're best to just kind of weld a bead on top of the bolt and then get a larger nut that the bead of the weld will fit inside of that nut and then weld onto that secondarily. It also helps if the fastener is heated up pretty good too, so that's why we got the torch out. Well, more isn't always better, but these new tools are really helping out. A lot of you folks have said, hey, the map gas isn't going to cut it. And it's not that like that was new news or anything. Everything's kind of time and money. So, put some of my money into this stuff. Unfortunately, this welder will run off of that generator. But yeah, so we got that thing extracted. You can see that, it's got a bit of a nipple on the end there that obstructs the flow of the grease. And when it's releasing, it'll come out of there. So yeah, I don't think we need to buy a new one. If it's strong enough to extract itself, it can go in and out a few times. We'll just clean those threads up and lube it up and keep pushing forward with the rebuild process. And you can see what the one looks like on this one here, nothing special. So yeah, saves us a couple of bucks and we got it out, so all to the good. All right, so this is what I call a special sauce. It's 1/4 gas, and 1 part gas, 3 part diesel. Works pretty good as a parts cleaner to get this thing cleaned up. All right, this thing's cleaned up pretty good. If you can see through the bore in that thing, looks real nice. All right, all the areas where the seal goes are cleaned up. So I'm gonna get this thing greased up a little bit so everything slides real nice, and we'll get started putting this thing back together. So here's the new seal that I already test fitted on here. This one came out with that, I'm going to call it a double bevel edge going down. So we're going to make sure that we put this one in that way. These appear to be the same width and the same diameter. This could be a little bit of a trick to squeeze in there. I'm kind of wondering how this is going to go. I'm going to try putting this in from the back side. It seems like there's a little bit of a bevel there. I don't know if that's going to help or not. All right, I think that's the correct way to do it. If you look, there's a bevel. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I kind of pushed it in to this groove from the back side. Kind of used the butt of a hammer handle, and that got it in there. Now this other guy here, is some type of, I'm going to call it a neoprene, plasticky kind of seal, but it's got this metal casing on it. So I think this one we'll just kind of hammer in with a rubber mallet. That guy's in there too. You can see nice and good in there. It actually would go a little further than flush, so I just kind of used the hammer and tapped it with another hammer to get it all the way in. I'm gonna hit these with a good amount of grease. That way when I go to slide this back together, everything is gonna gel real nice. One other thing I'm going to do is we've got some pitting here, and that would be if it was all the way compressed. I'm going to go over this with a file to knock that pitting off. I'm going to get these, the greaser for inserting the grease, all greased up. I've greased all these holes so that way they're full of grease and they're not going to take on water and make a mess on down the line. Same thing with the one we extracted. Get that thing greased up real nice. Put it in that pre-greased hole. All right, so here's going to be our last step. Now this is what I'm going to call an O-ring. It's not really an O-ring, but this goes down into this groove here. I've got that pre-greased to kind of hold it in place and keep everything all nice and lubricated. That's pretty important. You don't want stuff pinching each other. Now this is what I'm going to call a plastic ring. Looks kind of like an O-ring, but this inside is beveled on a 45-degree angle. This is meant to keep this O-ring held in place, and we're going to put it with that beveled side down. That's the way that it goes together. All right, so I've got that in there.
And then what I'm going to do now is take my little snap-on pocket screwdriver and push it all the way down in the groove to where it retains this thing really well. That way, while you're working on it, this thing doesn't fall out. Pretty important. All right, so as you can see, that's in there real nice. You can't really see it. Well, there's the second piece above my thumbnail. But yeah, so I'm gonna push this on here. I've checked this for burrs and kind of cleaned it up. So we're gonna push this back together now. That second O-ring's kind of being a little stubborn. So I'm gonna try something here. There we go. So it slid over that second O-ring. Well, we're all done with this. Now, if you notice the face of this will not go back any further than this because that will bump into the idler. So actually the little bit of pitting that we had here isn't going to be an issue as far as tearing those seals up goes. But yeah, this is a finished product. I'm not going to put you through, doing the other one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of that Glad press and seal that you use for cooking, kind of similar to the saran wrap, and I'm going to wrap this thing up and stick it in my little storage facility here. That way when I'm ready to put this thing back together, it's all good and lubed up and doesn't have a bunch of water contamination or anything like that in there. But yeah, this is ready to put back together. That's your full rebuild basically. It's those 2 seals and little cleaning, and maybe you need to hone your yoke, if you will, but this one didn't need it, and then getting these seals put together correctly. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. If you have not subscribed yet, consider subscribing. It's free and it helps me and the channel out a whole bunch. Got any questions, drop a comment. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.